Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 15 of HorseShow360 podcast. We've got a pretty exciting guest for you all today. We have Ronny Riemer, German Riding Instructor. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And Ronny, thanks for joining us today.
Well, Derek, I can't believe that it took you 15 episodes to finally have me on the podcast. I think we talked about that in Kentucky, right? First time when you had that idea.
Yeah, I mean, we've been planning on doing the podcast for a while, and we're still in the obviously very beginning stages with only 15 episodes, but we're really getting into it, enjoying it. We're just now starting to have guests like yourself on now that we've worked a little bit of the kinks out and everything, but it's been really fun. It's always good, I think, for the industry to have these kind of conversations, natural conversations. No intention for anybody to take offense to anything or anything like that. It's just so we can learn and grow and hear different perspectives and continue on. Just so everybody knows, this general topic, we'll get into a lot of different things, I'm sure, with Ronny, a very outspoken guy. But this episode could be considered a little bit controversial, and I don't want to offend anybody. I know,
I
Ronny,
do.
you're not afraid of that, but
Yeah.
the general topic is going to be exhibitor etiquette, but I think that's going to transition into a lot of different things here. But give us a little bit of background on yourself, Ronny. I know you and I have only kind of met recently, to be honest. I know we've talked over the years. You've given me a call about your local champions tour in Ocala, which is pretty cool. Stuff like that. But the first event you ever came to of ours was this fall in Kentucky. So I appreciate you coming to that. But give us a little bit of background about yourself and why'd you come to America? Did you come to America for the equestrian business, other things? Like, give us a little bit of background.
Well, yeah. First of all, had a blast being the first time at Split Rock, especially such a big facility or great facility with so much history like Kentucky. I mean, it was a long time coming. We have been in contact, just never really had the right horse to come to your place. And for me, it was a highlight, I have to say. And I would like to just like restock so that I can be a part of Split Rock a couple more times. Um, Chanel and I, we moved to in January 2012, um, straight into a color, horse business related. The main move focus was not, I mean, that is the entire podcast right there, was I was burned out with the horse industry. Um, I kind of like stopped riding for 2.5 years. And I actually came to the United States for professional wrestling, which I also did for 5, 6 years in the United States. Started at
Like actual
FCW,
wrestling or WWE type stuff.
WWE. Yeah. So I did a couple of months at FCW, which used to be the development league for WWE, before I then transitioned to WXW, which was led by Afa the Wild Samoan, who is the uncle of Dwayne the Rock Johnson. And that was the promotion where I spent most of my time.
Didn't know that.
And because in the beginning, with any other sport, you don't make money while you're like climbing the ladder. So I thought, well, Mineola or color is close enough. In the horse business, I can be a little bit in, and I kind of played it like down key or low key, and didn't tell anyone about the past, what I've done in Europe, and kind of just worked a little bit as a groundskeeper and groom because I really didn't want to be that much in the horse industry anymore. But then, of course, the horse bug that never lets lets go of you kind of just came back in. So that's like a very, very long story that I could make out of it. Very dense short.
That's WWE. So is that a little bit like where you get a little bit of that comedian side of you? Like, have you always been a comedian? Have you always wanted to do a little bit of that, or is that just for
Well, I
content's
was
sake? Like, what is that?
always the class clown, like always in trouble with the teachers for like stupid comments and this and that and what. So it was always that kind of character, always outspoken, always a little bit of headbutting because it's like if you tell me you have to, I'm like, do I really? If you tell me this is how it is, then I always question like, but is it though? It was always that like questioning character and but then also like outspoken if I'm like I don't think this is right. I always had a hard time accepting other people's opinions at face value. I always said like, okay, it's interesting, can you elaborate? Like I've always been two sides of a coin kind of person, like we had those conversations where we always talk about the mileage rule, there's two sides to that story and I'm interested in hearing all sides of it, but then it's also for me important with certain issues that are very very close to me that I really go into a deep dive and then
Maybe
sometimes
I'll have you back on for another episode if we talk about the mileage rule. That I think that would take a couple hours. I'm definitely gonna dive into that big, but I don't know that
yeah.
that's we're ready for that topic today. But definitely in the future, I'll have you back on and we'll get into that because that's a monster one. But yeah, I always wondered with you, obviously watching your content on the internet or whatever Facebook or Instagram and that kind of thing. I'm not on TikTok, but um, I always wondered if that comedian side affected. How do you think that affects the credibility side of your serious side? Like, recently did a bunch of posts on your Instagram or wherever you did. I followed them and I thought they were great. I listened to all of them. You made a lot of good points and stuff like that we can pick out today and discuss. But I think it's funny how you go from, completely not serious and some of your comedic spoofs and stuff to extremely serious, passionate type conversations. No?
Yeah, I think it's like a little bit of that. Like I like to be the fun guy. I like to be, like have a crack a joke, make everybody feel happy and that kind of stuff. But it gets to a certain point where I'm like, okay, guys, fun's over. I tried it in a comedic, light way, opening up. But then if you feel like you're getting just like brushed off, then the famous German riding accent, that I use for my videos when I'm very funny, then that accent goes away when I'm like, okay, guys, like let's start like logistically get serious about this. So I think people that follow the German riding instructor and RCR, they know me as a person and they know when this is satire, this is comedy, and like, oh shit, now this is real. And I think also deliverance, like I'm passionate about a lot of things, and like I can talk passionate about stuff. But when it gets to the point where I feel that my passion is a little bit under attack, then I also can turn it all from comedic to almost aggressive defensive, where I'm like, okay, guys, enough is enough, we got to do something.
Yeah, you definitely seem a little defensive. I mean, I think we share in the regard and in personality on the serious side. Like I started creating these horse shows and had this idea to do different types of horse shows out of my similar frustrations to yours. So, I mean, we share a lot of those things when it comes to the horse show side and how things can be done better and what kind of production and obviously now I'm 10, 11 years in and a lot of trial and error and stuff like that. So, made a career of it. So, I mean, that's what my business stemmed from. So I can share with that side. But on me, people always take me as only serious, right? Like it's only this either I'm just an asshole or these kind of things. But like you said, the people that know me and why we do things, it's kind of a different atmosphere. Um, but yeah, I mean, I always kind of wondered with you. That's why I wanted to ask you that question. And I hope you don't take offense to it. Again, like I always wondered if you're doing it for attention, content, or you're actually what the line is from when you're being serious and not serious, you know? And I think that
Yeah.
that's a good point to differentiate.
So definitely the German riding instructor is attention, content, comedy,
Yeah,
bringing fun, bringing laughter. I mean, our industry is like as stuck up serious as,
totally.
it's almost unbearable. But to me, yes, like these 9-part Rant series, yes, is attention. But I shift attention in a way where, with the German riding instructor funny side, I want to bring attention to RCR and to the German riding instructor brand. But then when it comes to those Rants, I'm going to shift my attention from I don't care about the German riding instructor anymore. I don't care about making you laugh. I don't care about making you entertained. That's when I shift the focus and actually I'm shifting the focus and the attention on the issues that I'm actually trying to announce, like horse welfare, horse show etiquette. Like,
Sure.
I mean, 9 parts. Like, I touched on a lot of subjects that
Was
are
that
very
one sit
close
down?
to my heart.
Was that one sit down that you just went on and on about, or was that
I
multiple?
was no, I sat down and I just went ballistics on it. And then I basically just had to chop it off
Chop it up.
because
Yeah, yeah, I was
attention
wondering.
span of people is not an hour and 14 minutes anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good. I mean, you bring a lot of a lot of points to light in your 9 parts. I think it was that I think most people think, but aren't willing to say. And I think that these platforms like this podcast, your series, your subscription series, all your different things, like bring these conversations to light. I don't think any bad can ever come of it. No matter what direction, no matter what tone, no matter what, like these conversations have to be had in our industry to either soften it, let people see different perspectives and hear different perspectives. I think the one thing that you and I have a little bit different sides on that before we kind of get into the real topic of things, I've also always wanted to ask you because, you know, I before running horse shows, I was a professional show jumper myself my entire life. Grew up through the American system, doing equitation, very successful. Then turned into a show jumper, had a good business, that kind of thing. So I've seen kind of both sides. Now I do horse shows, and you know, the one thing that's always you and I've kind of talked about this. The one thing I've never agreed with, which I actually understand your point of view in this topic, because you're coming from the exhibitor side, not the horse show organizer side. But I get really frustrated when the exhibitor base and the um, general public from equestrian exhibitors blame the federation. Like why are your angles always blaming the federation? I feel like that's a real cop out, to be honest. I
I kind of had a
I,
feeling you would go into
I
that
like,
direction as
but
a
see,
horse
this
show
is the thing.
organizer.
No,
I had a feeling you go into that direction because you don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's just my opinion. Getting dates, getting help here and there, that kind of stuff.
but that's
So
horse show business. That is not the topics that you're talking about. That's
I'm
totally.
talking I'm talking about the federations. So okay, there's two angles that, in my opinion, are to blame for the status quo of today's horse showing, especially in America, because this is where I'm active since I would say 2015. From 2012 to 2015 was just like mingling, lingering, whatever. Very, very active since 2015. Since 2015, I have started those conversations that are still the same conversations. And I have to say, without naming any names, multiple, let's call him employees and not give him any titles, in the higher ups of both federations, USEF, USHGA, over the last couple of years, whenever there was me edging on those issues, there was a lot of people that, like, on a continuous basis reached out once I spoken out and said, like, you have great ideas. I think a lot of this should be implemented. We need to sit down. Let's get something done. I was always open. I always had my door open. It's like, yes, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Then I get a text message and say, like, the board doesn't think it's a good idea to sit down with you. It's bad publicity. Because as outspoken as I am, you know that I would, like, if I would do a podcast with any of the big guys, you would know that I don't hold back. That's bad publicity. Because a lot of things where I blame it to is horse show organizers, and I'm going to explain why, and federation. So if you can give me a topic that is wrong in today's horse showing, there are pinpoints to the federation. So let's go easy into horse welfare, right? If a third party, let's say like Peter, God forbid, would come in and would start really trying to shoot out, if they say your horses are doing way too many classes at the horse show, do you have any regulations about it? No. Your horses are allowed to go into heights or classes that are not capable of going, or the riders are not capable of going. Do you have any regulations for that? No. So, and you could go down and down and down the list. So now, as a federation, if a third party would try to shoot at us, they have all the flanks open. They can't say, we're dealing with it, we're dealing with it, we're dealing with it. You kind of leave it open, like it just happened now with the Horse Protection Act that's going to now moved to end of April, beginning of January, where the Federation for the Tennessee Walkers, they had backlash about like dubious practices and horse welfare for years and years and years. They ignored it to the point that it got lobbied through Congress and now is a federal statute. So this is where I just feel if we don't move fast enough, there's going to be a third party outside that's going to say, like, you're not doing anything, we're doing something. And I think the Horse Protection Act is step one. We're just moving further forward from there.
But why do you think the first thing my brain goes to is individual responsibility? Like, and you talked about
why do you think we have speed limits?
I mean, I think you think you talked about this, and in the end, I think it comes down to the exhibitor, the trainer, the level of education that those trainers have and what they're trying to do, and then you have to differentiate between jumpers, hunters, other things.
Yeah, but let's talk about the education that trainers don't have. If I want to be a professional trainer in the gym, I have to go through training, certificate, da 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 da. Otherwise, I don't even get an insurance as a certified trainer. But now, if I'm a personal trainer in a gym, and Derek, I'll train you on a Tuesday. You come in, and man, like today we can't do legs. I'm fucking done. I can't. Like, we can have a conversation. So that means me training you is way easier in a communication basis than me training a horse that can't communicate with me verbally. So in my books, being a horse trainer is way more difficult from a mental state than being a personal trainer in the gym, because we have way more crossroads that we have to cross. But in a horse business, like, and I was talking to one of the Ingate guys about it the other day. He's like, look, I can buy a farm, I can buy a banner, I do great social media, whatever. I put 10 horses in my barn and I can open shop. Just like that. And on Youssef, you just go through the list. You click trainer and off you go. When I came to the United States, I had a stack this big. Letter of recommendation from my federation that I'm a professional. Letters from my my professional coach accreditation level B. I had letters of recommendations from 3 Olympic riders, and I had a stack of all my accomplishments between Grand Prix, Junior, Young Rider, Nations Cup, all those international shows. when I went through the USEF website to sign myself up, I got stuck and I called somebody. Somebody answered, super friendly, helped me through it. And when she was like, so, and now at this page, are you an amateur? Are you a professional? I was like, oh, I'm a professional. And then when I went through it and I was like, so where do I send my stuff? And she's like, what stuff? And I'm like, the proof that I am a professional, my trainer certification. And she's like, now you just click here and hit send. To me, that's not good enough. Italy, in the equestrian industry, has a rule that anyone under the age of 18, which is like the legal age in Europe, most countries' legal age is 18, same that you would consider 21 here in the United States. Under the age of 18, any junior young rider is required to have a trainer with a certificate, proven certificate. I mean, what they're trying to do here is run them through Safe Sport, which is now mandatory. But I can tell you first-hand experience from so many people, they have their little kids just quickly run through their Safe Sport, whatever. So we have unsupervised, uneducated, overly unqualified people standing at the horse show teaching the next generation. So for me, that self-governing, it doesn't work. You have to make the playing field for the most stupid person in the arena, and that is
I mean,
unfortunately how speed limits got introduced.
I don't disagree with you that there absolutely could be implementation of a trainer process, a trainer accreditation process. I definitely don't agree with. I definitely agree with that. I said I just think that it's a lot of these topics are pretty. The way people lambaste the federation and everything online, I just think it's an individual scapegoat. I think being the federation and an equestrian event, for instance, like events are sort of like an arm of the federation, right? They're implementing a lot of the things and the rules and everything, and having to make sure they're following all those rules and everything like that. And the events themselves sort of control that aspect depending on what level of event it is, and everything. So I do believe that there can be some process for how you should be a professional and everything like that. There is for horse show organizers. But I think just having the federation be the scapegoat, that they're not implementing things, for instance, that can start to help that, is giving judges, for instance, the ability to eliminate a horse or a rider dependent on how they're presenting themselves, whether it be safety, horse welfare, ability at a certain level. Judges have that ability to, and I've seen it at events where they eliminate a horse and rider because they're way too over their head or qualified, or it looks like they're going to injure one of themselves or things like that. So there are processes, I feel like, that are in place that can alleviate that thing. And I honestly take more responsibility on the events. Events are like, so the governing body is somebody that has to put everything as a whole into one big picture. And the amount of detail and constant revision to rules and everything that goes on a general basis is extreme. Like, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? So
Have you done a deep dive into changing rules and adapting new rules, like
well, I
from
don't know what you would consider a deep
actual
dive. I mean, I'm
workshop to
on the
town
competition
hall?
management committee that assesses most of the rule changes. So I would say I would say I
I
wouldn't.
did
I
a
don't know that I
little
would.
bit I did a little bit of a deep dive, like when I went into it, and that's just like my personality. I probably spent 12 hours, like over 3 days after riding on the computer and do a deep dive into USHA rulebook, watching town halls, watching annual meetings, like anything that is available there, like going through there, which at the end, in the mood set that I was in, a little bit disappointed, like borderline angry about it, because I have been on these topics since 2015. Since 2015, I get a pat on the back and say, like, yes, you're right. We need to do something. Not from my peers. I mean, you see it on social media. There's a lot of support, but from officials from the federation, which I am at the point right now where it almost feels like whoever always reaches out and talks to me, it almost feels like that little like stroke over the head, like, yeah, yeah, you're right, but now shut the fuck up and move on. Because anything that I have been touching on from 1 to 9 in the episodes has been going on since 2015. And we do not have, with social media being such a blessing and such a curse, we do not have the luxury today anymore, especially with third party interest groups starting to step in and regulating when they see regulation is not in place. We don't have the luxury to mull it over, think about it, let little Lucy chime in and this and that. The thing is, like, around the world are federations in place that have been almost longer around than the United States got invented. There are federations all around the globe that are producing high quality horses, riders, trainers with a system that is in place to prevent backlash like that.
Yeah, I
I
mean, I
have the
think
feeling that the federations, they always sit there, and I just listened to a podcast where the answers are just not good enough, where it feels like they're trying to sit and reinvent the wheel. And when you ask those people, just like, have you looked at this federation? Have you looked at these items? Have you looked how they do it there? It's always like, just like chugging their arms. And you're like, well, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Well, that is a question for somebody that's smarter than me. For me, as a leading position, that answer is not good enough. Could you imagine I, as a competitor, come up to you running Split Rock, and I tell you something about like, hey, Derek, there's a big fucking hole in the warm-up ring. It's really, really dangerous. And you look at me and she's like, I really don't know what to do about it. That is a question for somebody smarter than me. Then I would be like, then clearly you have the wrong job. Wouldn't you agree?
yeah, but I still think you're making extremely general statements. That is
Okay, then give me an
specifically,
example which is extreme general.
you just said since 2015, your words were nothing has been done on these topics.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you
In
think
every episode that you can look at, all those 9 topics were exactly the same as 10 years ago.
in your perspective, or you did research on any
I
of
did
the
research. Is
processes
is
that have been
there
put into it?
is there is there an amount of classes a horse is allowed or not allowed to do
But
at
that's
the
a very broad general statement. And I know you're going to tell me, no, it's not. But I literally 3 minutes ago just told you more processes have slowly been put into place to protect
That's the
these kind of
problem.
things.
Slowly,
But you
slowly.
can't.
We're
You
talking the
have, if
same.
you're a governing body, okay? If you're a governing body, if you're a governing body in the position like this, okay, Ronnie, you do have to take time to assess and see what
10
processes
years.
work better. But you can't just
10
throw a
years.
boilerplate and say, you can't just throw a
Oh, yes,
boilerplate
you can.
comment and
You
say,
need to look
what
at the
is what okay,
ramifications
everybody
that
in the
are.
room, what's 10 what classes do you feel is the appropriate number? Let's do a poll and say, okay, let's go with that rule. You can't do that. I guarantee you, and I'm not on here. I can't I can speak to certain things in committees that I discuss and rule changes and stuff. I know that stuff in my head and stuff like that. But in general, what I can tell you is that these conversations are being had. They are being had. You may not think so. Everybody out there may not think so, but
I've
they are
listened to
being had.
the
And
podcast.
I just
I
gave you one
listened to the podcast.
example of a
I listened
tiny,
to
tiny
the,
little thing.
yeah, but I listened to the podcasts where Britt was on. I listened to the podcast that Tom was on. I watched the town halls. I read into this and we not have the luxury to keep dragging our feet for 10. And then the process,
I don't
how it
disagree with
runs
you.
through, and the committees that it has to run through. Again, that is my opinion, but I'm watching this, like I said, closely since 2015. It is, we don't have the luxury to go like chime in here, chime in there. There has to be realistic change. And the thing is, like I mentioned it, there are federations around the world that do have a lot of things that I'm edging on in place, and you can look at, again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and that is the problem. Like, why would you decline a proven working system just because you didn't come up with that idea? That is idiocracy.
A proven working system, like you're talking about federations in Europe, that kind of thing, or what?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, there. I don't even know them, but I can guarantee you there are a lot of other reasons and a lot of other things that play. Completely
I know.
different demographic, completely
No,
different
I
type
can
of
tell you
business over
exactly
here.
what the difference is. Nobody, trainers, okay, I put them in quotation marks because I think there's a lot of people that are not really trainers, right? Trainers don't want a limitation on rounds because of trainer rights, this coaching, that coaching, that coaching. It cuts into their profits.
Preparation. Yeah,
You,
I understand. Preparation.
you, as a horse show organizer, you don't want limitation on classes because that means instead of Lucy riding like a bag of chips, having have to do 6 classes until she finally gets it right, maybe is limited to 4 classes. That cuts into your profit. Anything that cuts
But
into your
also
profit
level
cuts
has a
into the
huge.
federation's profit. The difference is Europe runs it as a sport. America runs it solely as a business. USEF, since they took over the American Horse Show Association, haven't really changed. It's a horse show.
But you're
It's a
you're
horse,
again you're
not a
talking
sport.
about boilerplate general. There's so many other little details that the first thing that could just comes to my head is the level you're limiting, right? If you were to say to me, if you were to say to
Oh, of
me,
course.
if
I'm
wait, wait,
not
wait,
saying
if you were to
cross
say to
railers
me,
can do
a
more than
horse
in a.
probably shouldn't jump more than, let's say, maximum 4 rounds at meter 40 and above in a week, not
Right.
including jump offs, obviously. But then when you get what about a horse that's jumping cross rails and
Oh, no,
the other
that's what
type of
I'm
things?
saying. You're not putting a certain number. You don't say like each horse, each show, 3 classes. Look, if there's a pony that does cross rail, and then what is the other one, like under tag or whatever, just a flat work, like it's a different. But you need to have
Again,
regulation that you say,
all things. Uh, I'm not disagreeing with you that there could be a limit on things, but it's going to take a lot of assessment, a lot of time before you come up with a rule for it.
no, it
Let
doesn't.
me wait. Let me finish. Yes, it is
It
because
doesn't.
it
If you
not all
want it,
things are equal.
if you want to
Not all
push it
things are
away
equal,
and
Ronnie.
another problem, then yeah, it's gonna take time. You want to mull it over, mull it over, mull it over. I'm telling you, you guys do not have the luxury to keep the boat running against the wind like you have been for 10 years. And it's either the federations that are moving quick now and stop running that political bullshit, red tape, and oh, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that. At the end of the day, there's going to be a third party coming in that is going over the head and going to regulate that. And they're going to do it for a valid reason
I
because
don't disagree with you, but you're not
change.
listening to
So
some of my points. You're
no,
not
I
listening.
am.
You're interrupting me and not listening when I'm trying to get a point across. There are such minute little things. Okay, for instance, not all rounds are equal, Ronnie. Not all riders, trainers, and horses and the way rounds are being done are equal. I 20 minutes ago now, I gave you one tiny little reason as to why, um, rounds need to be assessed differently. Like if you were to make, you just said a round needs to be dependent on level, can be adjusted. You can only do this many rounds if the height is this, but it's not even about the height. I don't think horse welfare as well. If you're looking at it in a very general status and saying, yep, 8 rounds is the max at cross rails. Okay, that's not fair. I think again, it comes back onto regulations. I like the conversation better that it's regulated on the trainers. Let's educate the trainers and everybody have a process to put into a system that gives trainers the ability to succeed, go to school like you do in Europe and get accredited and go through a proper process. I like that first because there can be a rider and a horse, let's say jumping 2-foot hunters, okay? That goes around 20 times, I'm just saying, 15 times, okay? And that rider and horse is extremely dangerous, okay? Extremely dangerous, clearly going to hurt themselves or the horse, puts everything into perspective, into a bad light, and everything like that, and really is putting that welfare of that horse in jeopardy, okay? And mind you, like I said before, a judge, a steward, which I know you're going to get into, we're going to get into, can have an assessment and say, okay, this is too much. You're eliminated. Go back to the barn. Go reassess. Come back at another horse show when you're more prepared. Like that process is in place. And then there is another one, a horse that it looks completely happy, is very sound, going around trucking, maybe overqualified for the division, where they're jumping really tiny jumps that's not strenuous, like you're jumping meter 40 or meter 30 or above, or these kind of things with fast pressure and turning and these kind of things, and is great. So, and is adorable for the kid and is doing these kind of things and is clearly not putting pressure on the horse and the rider, and the trainers clearly put them in a position to succeed and leading up to, so I don't think it's that boilerplate of a conversation. And you're saying it has to be boilerplate of a conversation. Our sport in America is
It's not a
so
sport. It's not a
different.
sport.
Okay,
It's
some
not a
parts of
sport.
it are a sport. So let's just say our
What
sport
you're
and
doing
hobbies and
on an
everything.
FEI level, that is a sport.
Okay, so are you
Everything on a
telling
national
me
level is pageantry.
no, wait a sec.
It
Wait a
is
sec.
100%.
Let me
The
speak.
way it
You're
runs,
being good at interrupting me. Let me
I'm
speak.
super good and very good at
Let,
being opinionated.
yeah, so am I. But I'm calling you out because that's not fair. That's not fair. And I will go to riders, exhibitors, trainers, and has nothing to do with horse shows. Defense to this, okay? And I'm going to give you an example. Do you have kids?
Not yet. Still,
Okay, you don't have kids. That's why you don't think it's a sport. Okay, and I'm going to tell you this. My little boy, Crew, and my daughter. I have a boy that's 4 years old and a daughter that's 13. Okay, do you know? Like my daughter started at the age of 8, and she's not very competitive in this. She doesn't want to do it big like we did it, but when she's on that horse and working on that horse at a super low level, and I know you train clients too, and if you have
student.
clients that have good attitudes and everything like it, you don't think it's a sport. That's not fair. That's not fair because I know there are the majority of exhibitors out there that are coming into that show ring, that are breathing as hard as they can breathe, putting as much mindset as they can possibly put in it to achieve at every single level, working the way all the way up to the Grand Prix, regardless of whether they're at the highest level. And to me, that is sport. My little boy is doing soccer at 4 years old, or tennis, and learning the things. Are you telling me because he's not already a professional or these type of things that he's not doing a sport? That's bullshit.
I
That's
totally agree
bullshit.
with you. No, I 100% agree with you. The point that you're taking is not horse riding itself. Yes, that is a sport. The way it is handled through the federation and through horse shows, that is not a sport. You're taking the sport out of the sport. You're not handling it like a sport anymore. Look at the development from like hunter classes and jumper classes. How, I mean, from the rail on the ground
What's
in
the difference
the
with figure skating? Are you saying figure skating's not a sport? It's the same thing. It's a show.
I'm not a,
It's a
I'm
horse
not a,
show. You're supposed to learn what you learn, execute it, put it into a horse show, put it on display for somebody to score or judge or anything like that. There are lots of sports out there. There are lots of freaking sports out there. Wasn't there at the Olympics with this breakdancing? What is the difference? It's a show that you're getting scored and judged on. Doesn't
Yeah,
mean it's not a sport.
yeah. Well, being a sport and being scored, the one doesn't eliminate the other.
To me, anything. Okay, I had this conversation with Mike, who's I'm bummed he's not on this podcast today. He's my co-manager, but he doesn't think Formula One is a sport. What would you say to that?
Formula One,
Formula One drivers, that they're not athletes.
I think,
Okay,
I think, yes, on that scale, you are an athlete.
okay, but
100%.
not even an athlete in
Formula
a
Two
sport.
drivers are athletes.
To me, anytime you work at something with passion, in with work ethic, all the different things in any capacity to where you're trying to achieve something or get better at something or it can enhance your fitness level or anything like that, to me that's a sport. Okay?
Okay,
And
let me
riding,
ask you. Let me ask you
Anthony,
then
you
on
ever
that topic,
Anthony, the
because I
producer
think
here.
I
Have
think
you
you.
ever ridden a horse? You've ridden a horse. Do you think it's hard? Do you think it's easy? So Joe Schmo, you're
I
not Joe
can no,
Schmo,
I
sorry,
can give
Anthony,
you an
our
example
producer
about that.
here.
I can give you an example about that. Chanel's brother does uh what's it called? The fucking running through the city. Marathons. He does marathons. He does triathlons, and went to the Ironman in Finland, right? He
Athletic.
is a tough, athletic son of a bitch, right? When he came to visit, we went on a 1 hour trail ride, just walking, trail ride. The next 2 days, he was sore as hell. He was like, holy, I'm done. Like,
You're
sport.
disproving your own point.
Yes, but I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. I'm not shitting on horse riding is not a sport. That
That's
would
what you said.
mean
You said
I'm
it's a
not a sport.
pageantry.
Exactly. The way it is handled here is a pageantry. You are watering down from what
It's
has
called
been.
a horse show.
It doesn't matter how you
Of
call
course
it.
it does. It's the
No,
name of
it
the.
doesn't. If I put shit on a stick, it's not a flower. It doesn't matter what you call it. You're not getting my
I think
point.
you're
Let me explain
discrediting.
to you.
You're
Let me explain to you.
discrediting.
Formula One, you are the opinion that it is a sport and they are athletes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
There's hobby
I go
levels to it. Yeah.
okay, I go into Formula One now, and over years, I'm gonna allow more drivers, I'm gonna allow more teams, I'm gonna start making the tracks easier, I'm gonna start making the cars slower. Maybe now I'm gonna make two-seaters out of it so that your
But there's
trainer can
different levels to
you.
everything. There's and mind width.
Yes, but like, okay, now the fact I want to hear your opinion why combinations have been taken out of anything lower than 80s.
What does this have to do with the conversation we're having?
It's getting there. I want to have your opinion.
So my opinion, do I think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
No,
What's the
doesn't
question?
good. I just want to know what your opinion is why they took it out.
Opinion of why they took it out.
Or maybe you know why they took
Probably horse and rider welfare. What other opinion would it be?
So
Is
the
there another
reason
opinion?
so the reason why it got taken out is accidents, right? So now let me ask you this. I have walked so many courses at horse shows with my bigger riders, with my lower riders, all that kind of stuff. If I walk the 65 centimeters in the morning and I walk that line and I'm like, this is the same distance as it was yesterday in the meter 20s. It never has been adjusted. It has been rails up, dragged, put back in. So I have talked to so many judges in the last couple of weeks when all this started boiling over, what their opinion on it is. To me, It is a shortcut. The problem is that I walk combinations that are not set to the height that there should have been set, which, yes, it makes it dangerous. That is not good. It's not good in 65. And look at Harry Charles. It's not good if the combination is set differently at a meter 45. But also, what I'm glad that they changed it into optimum time classes now, right? But this whole mentality of having people at the in gate yelling faster, faster, faster on kids that have no control and it's dangerous, to me is then, again, to me, it's a band-aid. They're like, they can't do a
It's the
combination because
combination's fault.
and it's wrong. It's not the combination's
But you
fault.
asked me what my opinion was as to why it was done. It was done. You have the same
Rider
opinion.
say
It was done to try to do rider and horse safety, right? Like
exactly, but to
they
me,
think that it's the
and
combinations that are hurting the horses more than the other reasons.
yeah, exactly. But there again, to my point, instead of then raising the level of the sport and maybe have judges walk the course, like course walk is open. I mean, you guys do it in FEI, right? That like the head steward walks around and looks and measures and then has a
The
conversation with
judges,
the
not the
course designer.
stewards, but the officials.
Sorry.
Yeah, the officials, not the stewards.
Yeah, so the officials, the judges,
I would say the judges probably can do that here too, in the national
100%.
classes. Yeah,
Oh, 100%. And I
but
would
it's a
love
rule they have
that.
to in FEI. Yeah.
But I would love to have that because I think there's plenty judges that have enough knowledge that could walk a course in 65 and walk the combination and be like, oh shit, yeah, no, that's not gonna
Don't do
work.
this level. But again, these things are in place, Ronnie.
But
And
why are they not
and
happening?
I would say it's horse show organizers, to be honest. I would take the blame, not the federation. You're blaming the federation. The federation has these processes in place. Judges can come in and intervene and do it. And I would say, and these judges are educated enough to do it. But again, it is a full circle thing. And I think a lot of organizers, not myself, I'm not just praising myself, but I hold my events to definitely a certain standard. And I've been outspoken to events. There are events in California that dummy the sport down, like it's insane and they can't get out of their own way. This is another big topic, but I would take the event as a responsibility. Event is responsibility, and I want to get it. This is the next topic, but
But why
I think we're doing a whole
as a
episode.
private person step in?
I think we're doing a whole episode on blaming the federation, why you're blaming the federation on things, and we're going to go into another episode of exhibitor etiquette, which this is part of it. Is that a lot of times I'll get a phone call, okay, as a manager, because a lot of people think, well, I guess in general, at our events, I'm pretty much can be the voice of everything and hopefully help somebody or change something or make tweaks, right? Or speak to the judges and these kind of things and say, what do you think? It's always a conversation. It can't be a demand because those people are in place to do their job for a reason. So for me, the instance I get calls all the time. I'll just use an example in young jumpers. Like young jumpers, there's like no system for it, right? I've always been so frustrated with young jumpers. I just take my horses on a path where I think they were over the years, not necessarily within the young jumper system, because there's no like real framework around it. Like there's no consistency and level and ease and these kind of things. So for me, but I get a call just off the top of my head. I got a call one of my last horse shows in Kentucky last year of being like, Derek, this, young jumpers are supposed to be meter 30 at this time of year, and this is meter 20. This is way too easy. How could you let this happen and everything? So I drive over, I run over. I'm like, let me check it out. I use my best judgment because I know the sport and the kind of thing, and I have a discussion with the course designer and the judge. This is what I did. I bring it to their attention. The riders can bring it to my attention. We assess it. We assess where it's at. Sometimes if the other people are in the course walk at the time, if we have enough time, we discuss with them and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this too? And you have to use that judgment. For me, my Grand Prix, it's funny. My Grand Prix are always to spec. Okay? If it says meter 45, mine are probably the most difficult meter 45 two-star Grand Prix out there on the market. I use very delicate materials, very everything. That's what it is. That's what you can expect. I don't tell the course designer to go down. I don't do it.
That makes me even better going double clear at your
Yeah,
place.
but I don't. You know what I mean? Well, I'm just kidding. I was kidding. But and people know that about our events, that they're serious. You know, whether it be 2-star, 3-star, 5-star, you're gonna get the level that you do. But there are a lot of horse shows out there, and I'm not just pointing fingers, that, like you say, want to keep the client happy and say, go down, make it easier, make them more comfortable. I am totally in agreement with you in the regard of dumbing the level down. And again, I bring it back to trainer's responsibility. And you made all these points. You made all these points in your rants, and I thought they were really good points. But I think your angle of blame is wrong. It's wrong. It's not the Federation's fault. The Federation can't, okay, you can't have 1 million employees just standing there. That's why the organizers and the events and the management is, maybe I could say, the Federation's arm of implementing these things. And I think that those processes are getting much better. You see events all the time now. It's, different things layered on layered on layered that are changing. Events are getting better and better everywhere because the standard is becoming a little bit higher of quality and all those things. And that's because of the Federation pushing and holding to standards, not the market just correcting itself. They are literally doing it, and they're doing it with who they allow to have horse shows, when, why, where, all these things. That's why all these events are getting better. Look at these events in Florida. We were talking about how many good ones there are. Okay, and yes, it's all opinion, but look at the standards. Terra Nova just popped up. Like, could you get a better venue than that? Whack. Wellington is making these improvements now that are needed. Like, these standards are being kept up because of the pressure of the Federation to
Are you
the
talking
organizers.
facility improvements?
What?
Are you talking facility improvements?
Yeah, facility improvements.
Okay, yeah. I'm happy with the facility improvements.
Yeah. No, but I know,
It's not,
but you're saying the Federation is not doing things staying stagnant for horse welfare and everything like that. You think
but you
facility
just
improvements is not related to that?
you just proved my entire point that Yusuf is hidden in a way still the American Horse Show Association. They are pushing you guys for improvements. Yeah, better footing, better this. But now we're talking facility, facility, facility again. If I ride the snot out of my horse in 30 rounds in a week and yank and pop, then it doesn't matter if I have the most beautiful palm tree, the best footing that you can think of, the greatest horse show organizer, um, the
It's
best candy.
on officials, management. I think officials that may be hired by USCF. So that's a point of agreement maybe I can have with you. It's on the people working these events in order to implement these things. But I'm telling you, there are things in place to implement everything you're saying. There may not be a boilerplate rule that says you can only, if you're jumping meter 20 and above, you can only jump 5 classes. There is not a rule like that, but I'm not there yet that there needs
Why
to
is it
be, and
not?
I'm taking out
Because
my
there's
management.
other federations that have it. There's more federations that have those rules than not. Even
And do
South
they,
Africa, a third world country, has
does
regulation
South
of
Africa have like a hunter version of their sport the way we
they
do?
have underhand equitation and that kind of stuff. Like it is very, very similar
So
to
now
the
are you going to get into regulating as well? And is it on the Federation's fault to regulate how much is somebody going to be out there with a clock? Okay, which I think is more detrimental to the horse about how many times it goes around the ring. But what happens to that horse to get to that show ring? Are you going to go out there to the lunging ring at 4 a.m. with a clock and say you can't lunge your horse for an hour and 20 minutes with a freaking plastic bag at the end of a whip, which obviously we know if it's seen gets approached, but things like that. Like where are you
100%.
where are you drawing the line?
I don't draw the line. There is, for me, you put so much trust in your exhibitors. I don't. I have been for so many
Oh, I
years
don't
now
put
boots
trust in
on,
exhibitors, and we are going to get into that.
but that's
Uh,
exactly what you said. You want the trainer to be in charge of making that judgment call, how many classes, how many horses, how many this. I have been on the ground shoulder to shoulder with so many people that I wouldn't trust with any of that. And
okay.
self-policing with the American mentality does not work.
Okay. I'm so glad
Americans
you
are
used
too
that word. I put trust into my exhibitors. No, 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 no. I put trust in my
trainers.
officials and staff that I hire. Okay?
Okay,
Not all shows are equal. Not all
but
shows are equal.
didn't you say the problem with how many classes and what classes the
You're
students can
talking
do
about
would go
rules,
back onto the trainers?
but you're talking about rules. You're talking about rules. It's two parts, okay? We're having
Yeah.
a conversation about what a rule should be, and we're having a conversation about ethics. There's two different conversations, okay? One is trust for me as an organizer to implement the rules and to implement and make sure everybody is safe on our property that we're responsible for operating a horse show. I put my trust in the people that my organization chooses to hire to have that responsibility. Okay. So I do trust the officials and the stewards and the judges that I hire to do the things to hold my event to the standards of your expectations that you're describing. Absolutely. Not all things are equal. Not all stewards are equal. Not all individuals and peoples and personalities are equal. Not all judges are willing to step up and say, hey, 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 enough. Enough is enough. Not all things. So, again, when it comes to enforcing rules, standards, welfare stuff, I'm going to put it on the responsibility of the organizer and the events. Those events, it's our responsibility to make sure every horse, every rider, everything is safe on that event. It is not the federation. And I will say that right now. It is not the federation's fault. They are, in my opinion, implementing things to put it out there exactly the way you're describing it. Now, I'm not in the inner workings of other events. I don't, obviously I'm doing my own. I'm not standing at the other ones. I've been an exhibitor of ones a long time that I've seen things that you are describing to me should be done, but are not being done because those organizers are sitting in their office, not taking phone calls, ignoring those phone calls, not being quick enough, being present at the in-gate of important things all the time. The first thing I say to everybody that helps me manage my events, now, like my June events, I have 5 managers. Five managers. I have a manager to hover over the in-gate of 2 jumper rings, hover over the in-gate of 200 rings right next to each other, myself overseeing everything. And these are processes that I've implemented because of everything you're describing. You're not describing things wrong. I think you're just a little bit, in my opinion, wrong on who's to blame for it. And I'm okay. I've taken that responsibility. And, you have to look at everything as a whole and say, what goes here, what goes there, what's in the best interest of these things. But remember, I can implement as an organizer everything you're describing. Everything, and I should. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because, it's all in. So I have staffing lists on staffing lists on staffing lists. I go over with my team every single week. Who do we have in these positions? Where? Why? What? All of it takes forethought. All of it, down to the cross rail ring. Everything. What are we going to do to make these people happy, safe, these kind of things? Is this tent positioning on this arena going to scare a horse and potentially injure a rider that's not equipped to handle those variables? I do that. I don't know about other organizers. I'm sure they do, but I do that. I do that. And it's of the
I don't
federation's expectation of
I don't know
me.
if we have a language barrier or if you choose to not understand what I'm saying. I'm not talking about rule enforcement, about rules that are in place. I'm talking about rules that are not in place
You're
that
speaking English.
100% should be in place. I agree 100% with you that the rules that are in place are, first and foremost, I don't think show organizer. I think licensed officials, because they should be trained on the rules. What they are missing, and this is
This is
just
why I say
inside.
who I hire is important, because not all individuals are equal.
So, but this is where I also think,
Be
like
careful what events you choose. That's
information
what I'm saying.
over the last couple of weeks, how many stewards and judges on the back channel reached out to me with like first-hand experience is also, they told me that for being a steward, warm up, bring whatever, I asked them, I was like, so is conflict resolution requirement for your job? And they're like, no, we never get schooled on that. Where I think then you're teaching your employees not good enough. Why do you, and I had that conversation with another horse show organizer, and I asked him about it. I was like, what is the deal? Like, I have heard so many times now, and people are willing to put it on record that they have approached people that did shady stuff in the warm-up ring because they're licensed official, told them about it, told them to cut it out, and at the end of the day got pulled into the office and get said, do you know that that person has 24 stalls here? You need to pipe down. To me, absolute conflict of interest. So that's what I'm
100%.
saying. I think the stewards should be not just trained in the rules, but you also don't want to have a steward that has a bad attitude and addresses something the wrong way.
So I'm in a complete agreement with that conversation. That
Yeah.
again is a different conversation, and it does come down to, who's hired, what, and why. So now a different point of view, which again,
Oh,
we've had
sorry, Derek.
we've had this.
Before we switch, I just wanted to finish up that thought. So I'm 100% agreement with you that the licensed officials are first and foremost for the integrity of the rules. And then you, as a horse show organizer, where I don't think a lot of that stuff should fall on you, but you, as a service provider, let's call it in that way, you are inclined to say like, okay guys, let's talk about this, what happened, let's find common ground here. So you are basically the diffuser if something is overstepped there. My conversation where I'm blaming the federation is rules that are not in place. I'm not blaming the federation for rules that are in place that I agree with you are falling onto the licensed officials and the show organizers. So
But
that's where the
yeah,
distinction.
I understand the difference, but this is what I'm trying to tell you is that I feel like they are constantly trying to adjust and rules to accommodate this on a grand scale. I don't think it's boilerplate, and I want to get to your other point you just made, which was a great one. I don't think it's boilerplate to just say for horse welfare, this should be the number, this should be the number. I do think there's way more analysis to be made that I believe probably is being made. That's why, but you say it's not taking long enough. But I do think the process is in place for the welfare, I don't know what the word to put is, adjustments can be upheld. I think that they can. And I think it's on the officials, organizers, and everything. We made that point. But you made a point that I want to actually come to your side on in the regard to licensed officials. So I hire specific stewards and stuff like that I feel is going to be strong enough and work with me enough. And I'm going to get into that in our next topic and episode. But I do believe it is an extreme conflict of interest, exactly what you're talking about, because obviously an organizer wants, people to keep showing and exhibitors to be happy and that kind of thing. But there is a line. There is a line. And our next episode, which I'm going to cut this off here soon, we're going to go into a whole nother episode, is like, horse show exhibitor etiquette and respect and disrespect. You know what I mean? And once an exhibitor crosses that line, then officials, horse show organizers, everything have to step in, right? But One thing that I would say that might solve the problem that I think that you're discussing is the conflict of interest in that regard is I hire the stewards and everything that are licensed and accredited and everything with education and experience to make all these proper decisions and uphold those rules, right? I'm going to make one suggestion out there. This might not be popular with the Federation or anything is, but could you imagine a difference if the Federation, like if I have to hire two, let's just call it two stewards for a certain size horse show. Could you imagine the difference if I didn't pay those stewards versus the Federation? If the Federation paid those stewards probably would be a whole lot stronger in certain circumstances than they would be if I paid them or the organizer,
But
right?
have you seen the tax returns of the Federation? Because that showed up in a deep dive that I did. The way they're spending money with the amount of horse shows that are running, they can't afford it. That is the problem.
Okay, but I'm just making a general.
But I was
But
100% on
this
you.
would solve a lot of your.
I was 100% on your side on that one. But some of the stewards then also said the problem then being hired and paid by the Federation would then also could bring in that they basically could get appointed to horse shows so that they say that so that you say like, hey, Jenny was super, can I have her again? And they're like, no, I think this time Jenny needs to go to California, you
Okay,
know.
well the FEI does that, and they do that in order to spread people out. There's not enough people in certain regions, like
and
they appoint foreign judges and stuff.
And I don't see the problem in that other than interruption of comfort. You know what I mean? Because that would mean a judge couldn't do 12 weeks at WEC or 12 weeks at HITS. That would mean that judge could, like judge or steward, let's put them both in one licensed official umbrella, that they could say like, oh, Joey is going to do the first 2 weeks of HITS, but then he's going to go to Sarasota, then he has to go there, like it cuts into the comfort of the judges because then they're like, I don't want to fucking travel that much. I had that because that was exactly my idea where I was like, any other real sport has it where the organization, could you imagine you have a hockey game where Tampa Bay Lightning plays at home and all the referees are being paid by Tampa Bay during the home game? Nobody would trust their
I
call.
think in general, and well, let's close this down. It's been a great conversation. I think in general, you seem to have, and this is not a knock on you. I think it's a great thing actually, but I think you have a lack of patience in a lack of patience in
10
seeing.
years.
But like I told you before, there are
You just you
processes in
just
place
you
to
just stepping
accommodate.
in you're just stepping in at like boiling point. I have been talking about this, knocking on doors and talking to USEF and USHJA top officials. That's what I'm saying. I have these talks for 10 years. For 10 years, people are
You've said
look
that a
just look
million
at the
times, but
comment section.
my argument to you
But
is
just
that
look at the
there
comment
have been
section.
processes to help all the things you're describing, and you're shaking your head because you're not
Not
getting
good
your
enough.
number. You're not
No,
getting your
not good enough.
number,
Yes, it's not good enough. Could you imagine you
but
run
not good enough
split
for who?
rock? Could you for the horses, for the horse welfare?
Okay, but like I told you, there's so many different variables. I completely disagree, man.
You guys make it way too complicated. It's that overly like business thought pleasing mentality. How can we Jimmy Jab and kiss ass without pissing off too many guys? And tell me I'm wrong. You guys are in the service providing industry. I am with Local Champions Tour. Like, I know a lot of those sites. I have been talking about this for 10 years. And for
Okay,
10
well
years, it
we'll
is not, I'm
disagree
just
to
talking
agree,
to my
agree to
best friends
disagree.
about
Well, I don't know what the saying is, but I genuinely believe that the processes are in place, or there are. I don't want to say the processes. There are processes in place to accommodate and take care of the things that you're frustrated with. I'm not in a disagreement in general terms of like could there be a rule for this and that and this and that? But I think it comes down to event accountability. I think it comes down to exhibitor accountability. I think it comes down to other things. I do think that maybe the federation could maybe do a better job at certain events that really lack this level of accountability of enforcing that kind of thing. I think that that's gotten better over the past couple of years, especially with event conditions that have to do with horse welfare and things like that. So, I mean, I think things are happening. They don't feel like they're happening fast enough for you on that topic. It's clear. But anyway, my opinion is they're happening because I can see them, feel them, hear them happening. Clearly, they're not happening fast enough for you, but that's a great conversation. And I appreciate your point of views. I mean, this, like I said, this is so good for the sport. Like, people need to be having these conversations. Hopefully something comes of it. Beneficial. I don't think anything negative can come of these kind of conversations. And I just want to give you a little different perspective of do I think things are in place for these kind of things? Yes. Are they good enough? I don't know, but they're there and they've gotten better over the last 10 years. I don't think they're.
And I appreciate the conversation. And like I've said, like things that I'm putting out there where I say, like, we should have this, we should have this. It's not the gold standard. It's the start of a conversation, and I want this conversation to go somewhere. And the reason why it has become such a big explosion is because I try to do it the right way, go through the channels, talk with the people on top of the table, and nothing has changed. That's like I said, you are here at the boiling point. But let's finish this conversation with just one question that I have for you. How many exhibitors did you have at your very, very first Split Rock? Roughly.
I'll go with horse count. It was
let's do
a disaster. I think I had like 110 max horses.
110
or horses. Yeah.
110 horses.
It was a
so let's say you sold 100 stalls. Let's say you sold 100 stalls.
150 stalls if it's 110 horse.
Yeah. So after 10 years putting blood, sweat, and tears into Split Rock, if you at the last show would have went from 100 horses at your first show to 150 and 120 horses, and that is just your growth in 10 years, would you be satisfied with that? With the amount of work that you're putting in?
Well, if I only went that much and that long, no, I wouldn't have a business.
Yeah. And that's exactly where I am with my feeling, like I've been talking for 10 years. And like I said, not just at a dinner table where nobody is listening.
I'm not following the analogy, though. I think you're trying to make a point. The
analogy is that you wouldn't be happy with the progress of that little of moving forward.
I wouldn't be happy with it. I wouldn't survive. Different.
Exactly. And I'm not happy with the little that has happened in the last 10 years about the topics that I have been talking about. Because these 9 episodes, all the topics are exactly the same topics that I've been talking about 10 years ago.
So you're not happy with the progress?
100%.
And this is where hopefully I told you that in my opinion, there has been progress. It's
so
just a different level of expectation.
10 years?
What's that?
You're telling me just to be patient for another 10 years?
I don't know. Maybe we can have this conversation in 10 years and say, is there a rule in place now for your specific number? But my opinion is that the rules are in place to account for the point you're trying to make. And anyway, good talk, my friend. Good talk. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into this heated conversation. More to come. That was episode 15. I changed the topic, by the way, Ronnie. The topic turned into why are you blaming the Federation? And we'll get to the next one. Episode 16 coming up next. Thank you all for tuning in to HorseShow360 podcast. Tune in on all podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, and tune into full episodes on our YouTube channel. Subscribe. HorseShow360 podcast. Thanks again, Ronnie, for joining us, and we will get into further topics after this.
Thanks for going head to head with